5 ways your scars reveal your calling. Number 1. Identity. Genesis 32:24-31. The very first scar we see after an encounter with God is Jacob's limp. All night long, Jacob wrestled with God. He wrestled with who he had been, a deceiver, a runaway, a man carrying guilt from his past. He wrestled with who he might become. And when dawn broke, God touched his hip. In one instant, Jacob's strength gave way, and from that day forward, he walked with a limp. But that limp wasn't weakness, it was witness. It was proof that he had been chosen, proof that he had been changed, proof that he could never walk the same again. Chosen one. Maybe you've wrestled like Jacob. Maybe you've wrestled with identity, with not knowing who you really are, with feeling like your past disqualifies your future, with asking God, am I really who you say I am? But here's the truth. Jacob's limp wasn't shame. It was a sign. The scar on his body matched the shift in his identity. That night, God gave him a new name, Israel. From deceiver to destiny, from runaway to ruler, from broken man to chosen nation. And your scars tell the same kind of story. You might see them as weakness, as reminders of what went wrong, as proof you'll never measure up. But to God, they are evidence. Evidence that you've been in His presence. Evidence that you've been changed. Evidence that He's marking you with a new identity. You are not the same as who you were when you first started wrestling. Your scars prove it. And just like Jacob, your limp is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your calling. Number 2. Betrayal. Genesis 37:23-28. The second scar we see is the scar of betrayal. Joseph knew that scar well. He wore it the day his own brothers stripped him of his robe, threw him into a pit, and sold him as a slave. The wound of betrayal cuts deeper than most. It's not an enemy's attack that hurts the most. It's when it comes from people you loved, people you trusted, people you thought would be with you forever. And Joseph carried that scar for years, from the pit to prison, to being forgotten by men he had helped. It looked like his story was over. It looked like betrayal had buried his calling. But betrayal didn't bury Joseph. It positioned him. The scar of betrayal became the very evidence that God was writing a bigger story. Because one day, Joseph stood in the palace of Pharaoh, and the same brothers who betrayed him had to stand before him again. But instead of revenge, Joseph declared, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good." Maybe you've felt the sting of betrayal. You've been lied on, talked about, abandoned by people who should have covered you. And you've wondered, God, how do I move forward with this scar? But listen, your betrayal is not the end of your destiny. It's the proof that God is shifting you into purpose. Every scar from betrayal is being redeemed as a stage for testimony. Your calling is not buried in betrayal. It's being built through it. And just like Joseph, the very scar that felt like your destruction will be the evidence that you were chosen. Number 3, failure and shame. scar we see is the scar of failure. Peter knew that scar all too well. He had walked on water. He had confessed, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." He had promised with all his heart, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never deny you." But in the courtyard, by the fire, when the pressure was at its highest, Peter broke. He denied even knowing Jesus, not once, not twice, 3 times. And the weight of that failure crushed him. The sound of the rooster crowing must have echoed like a curse in his ears. He carried the scar of shame so deep, it felt like he could never be trusted again. But after the cross, Jesus met Peter on another shore, by another fire. This time, he didn't remind Peter of his failure. He asked him 3 times, "Do you love me?" And 3 times Peter answered, "Yes, Lord." And with every answer, Jesus rebuilt what shame tried to destroy. "Feed my sheep." The scar of failure became the proof of calling. The same mouth that denied him 3 times was the same mouth that preached at Pentecost and saw 3,000 saved. Maybe you know that scar. You've fallen short. You've made promises you didn't keep. You've carried shame like a chain around your soul. But hear me, your failure is not the end of your story. Your scar does not disqualify you. It confirms you, because the God who called you already knew your weakness, and He chose you anyway. Failure is not your finish line. It's the place where grace rebuilds your purpose. Number 4. Suffering and weakness. 2 Corinthians 12, 7 through 10. The 4th scar we see is the scar of weakness. The Apostle Paul knew this scar. In Scripture, he wrote about a thorn in the flesh, something he begged God 3 times to take away. We don't know exactly what it was, but we know it was painful. We know it humbled him. We know it made him feel weak. And yet, God didn't remove it. Instead, He gave Paul a different answer. "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Think about that. Paul, the man who planted churches, who wrote letters that shaped the New Testament, who walked in miracles and revelation, still carried a scar of weakness. And yet, instead of disqualifying him, that scar became the stage for God's strength to be revealed. Paul went from begging for it to be taken away to declaring, "I will boast all the more gladly in my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." Maybe you know what that feels like. You've carried something you wish would go away. A struggle, a weakness, a scar that humbles you every single day. You've asked God, "Why won't you just take this from me?" But maybe the scar isn't a sign of His absence. Maybe it's the place where His presence is most visible, because the scar of weakness is not where you end. It's where His power begins, and the very thing you thought disqualified you is the very thing that qualifies you to carry His glory. Your scars don't silence your story. They amplify His strength. Number 5. The ultimate scar. Isaiah 53:5, John 20:26 through 28. The final scar we see is not Jacob's limp, not Paul's thorn, not even Peter's shame. It's the scars of Jesus. When He rose from the dead, He could have come back flawless, spotless, with no trace of suffering, but He didn't. He chose to keep the scars. Why? Because His scars tell the story of your salvation. His hands pierced, His side opened, His feet wounded. They were the proof of his victory. When Thomas doubted, Jesus didn't preach a sermon. He held out his hands and said, "Touch my scars." The proof of his pain became the evidence of his power. And that's the same with you. The scars you carry aren't signs of defeat. They're reminders of survival. They're proof that what tried to break you didn't win. Chosen one, your scars are not the end of your story. They are the very evidence that God's hand has always been on your life. The place you thought marked you with shame is the place God will use to mark you with purpose. Because the truth is this: scars don't erase your calling, they reveal it. And just like Jesus, the scars you carry now will one day become the evidence that you were chosen to rise again. So don't hide them, don't bury them, hold them up like Jesus did, and let the world see that what scarred you is the very thing that proves you were set apart. Still scarred, still chosen, still called.